r/AskReddit. What is a seemingly insignificant thing that reveals a lot about a person? Littering. It usually tells me one of the following about someone. Duck it. Someone else has to clean this place. Not me. I don't give a shit. I'm careless, messy, and ignorant about the consequences of my actions. It's even worse when there is a perfectly good garbage can in sight. I don't get why smokers feel like they are God's exception to this. Cigarette filters don't sweep themselves up and go to the trash. They honestly don't think it's littering. I've quizzed smokers about this. They believe that because it's so small that it's insignificant, and they also believe that it will dissolve when it rains. First, no. Secondly, and then what about all the chemicals in the filter that are there to trap some percentage of the bad stuff from getting into the lungs? Oh yeah, hell with nature and wildlife. I've always felt that if I become infinitesimally mega rich, I'd pay homeless to pick up cigarette butts from the sides of the roads, and then I'd do a series of public service billboards just showing an actual container of a ton of discarded cigarette butts showing the date and place they were collected, to help visualize that cigarette butts matter and no, they don't just disappear 72 hours later. The world is not your ashtray. Damn it. If you want to know what a man's like, take a good look at how he treats his inferiors, not his equals. Sirius Black, who, one book later, treated his only underling like utter shit. Although to be fair, Sirius didn't just treat Creature like shit because he was inferior, he treated him like shit because he was a constant reminder of the house and life he hated. The amount and cleanliness of the icons on a person's desktop. Whatever man. I'm a history major without a printer. It's easier to write papers and save them to the desktop so I can find them easier when I email them to myself to get them printed in the library. There is a method to my madness. There are easier ways to do that, man. A revealing trick is to watch people from a distance looking for moments when they are not interacting with people or things. The pieces are very short, but for a moment their emotions can break the surface and show you their state of mind. So when you're not interacting with anyone, you're looking around at others? Basically just stare at them until your Psych 101 instincts pop in to break down their facial expressions into some type of syndrome. The way they treat animals. Hitler loved dogs. That says less about Hitler and more about how awesome dogs are. If someone is willing to share food, sometimes the person just wants to share to make other people happy because the person isn't. And I thought I shared food because I was nice. Ha. You're broken and you need to please others to fix yourself. Punctuality. Everyone can run a few minutes late, but when they are always late or act like it's no big deal, that's a bad sign. They are either flakes, insensitive, or just think your time is not important. This has something to do with how people view time. Can't remember the research, but a stressful person is almost always on time, but it does not make him a better/empathic person. I feel like I'm generally an okay person, but I have trouble being on time unless it's like work, a movie, or something that I'm in charge of. I have a hard time convincing myself that a few minutes are all that important. On the other side of ARP's viewpoint, I feel that if someone gets angry about you being a few minutes late, like 6 minutes, 10 is pretty late, they are tightly wounded and need to relax a bit, or they're stuck up. They think 5 minutes of their time is so critical. There's a special place in hell for people who don't put their shopping carts back in the parking lot collector thing. Same goes for those who dump unwanted, perishable items wherever they happen to be at that time. Is it so hard to walk back and put it where it's meant to go? At the very least, bring it to the checkout when you pay and tell them you changed your mind. We'll put it back for you. I've got no time for laziness. I used to push carts as a student job. Now I put them back every single time. How they behave when they think no one is watching. So much masturbation. If people knew what I do when I'm alone, then I'll probably be sent to a mental hospital. How they treat the waiter. I always watch how the people I am meeting for the first time treat waiters, and that generally sets the tone for how I treat them for the rest of the meal and even for the rest of our relationship. Given that this is commonly the top answer to these threads, I'm starting to think it actually isn't insignificant. Exactly. So would it impress my date tonight if I offered to help the waiter bring out our food, then give him a handy in the back? Seriously. How do you duck up the waiter/patron exchange? Mother ducker, where are my duck-in honey walnut prawns? We ordered them an hour ago. If you pass kindergarten, you should have enough social skills to answer the waiter's pleasantries with a "we're doing fine and yourself." Then place your order. It's not that challenging of an exchange. How they react to one's opinion that's different from theirs. X says a lot about someone without stating what it says about them. I'm a little late to the party, but I've always found that the way people generalize the world and the people around them is often a reflection of how they view themselves. How do they react to criticism? Are they trying to better themselves, or are they defensive, blame shifting, or victimized? Do they often attempt to give people the benefit of the doubt? Or do they condemn them without first asking questions or trying to empathize with their point of view? Do they make broad and sweeping generalizations about human nature, or even about large groups? That is, humans are violent and greedy by default. Women are irrational and emotional by nature. People will take any chance to screw you they can get. People can't be trusted, etc. But what if it's not so much that people can't be trusted and more so that I can't trust people? That's exactly my point. It's either a projection of intrapersonal issues such as "I can't trust people," or a reflection of their own character. "I can't be trusted, so I assume others are the same." The condition of their car, not the type of car, but whether they keep it clean, vacuumed, and washed, or full of junk, fast food wrappers, and clothes. It can really tell you a lot about a person. My car is messy. It tells you I'm a mom. I've found that a lot of women's cars are messy. Tidy houses but messy cars. It's weird. I spent years as a catering chef, and the bulk of our meals had carved roast beef as the protein, or one of them. After a couple years of serving people beef, you started to notice patterns develop. For example, bigger people, gym junkies and blue collars usually have more meat, with older people preferring meat a bit more well done. Most women would take about 2, 3, 4, the meat that men of about the same age do. The skinny mini-sized 2 girls couldn't possibly have more than 1 ounce of meat, and the slim little guys who metabolize as fast as a Ferrari usually take the most. It got to the point that I could start serving someone size and doneness with only. How does that look for you? And being right just by sizing people up as they approach with probably plus 90% accuracy. Not being sexist or judging or anything. Just observing and relaying the patterns I noticed. I feel like this really captured the spirit of the question. So do you think you could reverse this and guess the age, gender/size of the customer without seeing them first based on their steak order? Whether or not they gossip. If they're gossiping to you, they're most likely gossiping about you as well. I never got this quote. I love a good shit talk session, but I never gossip about people I gossip with. Their greeting. If they're seated, doth he stand up to shake your hand? Do they stand straight? Do they make eye contact? Is their grip firm and confident? And so on. It's momentary, but it reveals a lot about you. I can tell how uptight a person is based solely on how they are judging me during a greeting. I'm not really a judgmental person, but I'm able to tell what kind of person someone is within the first 5 minutes of meeting them. How they treat customer service people, from waiters to the people at whatever store they're shopping in. If I want to know the true measure of a person's character, I watch how they treat others when they have no special reason to be kind and are in a position of power. If they act with grace and consideration, I want them in my life. If they use their stature to make someone else feel small, that tells me I do not need them personally or professionally. Join our community Discord, link in description. How much they tell you about how well their lives are going. Fine. You? Yep. In conversation, my life is always amazing and optimistic. I am not trying to convince myself or others, but no one wants to hear a bleak negative slant in every goddamn thing. Because lying like this is so normal to me, I basically never say things are less than stellar for me. How quickly and how often they get offended at something. Screw you man, I have reasons. And on the flip side, how often they willingly offend people. I believe that whether or not a person is good at picking out a gift for someone else says a lot about how much empathy they have. Like, my dad has only ever been able to get me stuff that he thinks I should like, not stuff I actually like. It's subtly insulting in my family to give cash. It means that person hasn't thought enough about you to have a feel for what you'd like. Gift cards have gained acceptance, though. A gift card to a favorite bookseller acknowledges that you know the person likes to read, but you don't know exactly what's in their library. Cash is king. If they lie about themselves, even a tiny one. Coworker and friend of mine was having a conversation with someone nearby desk about how he dropped out of coding school because it didn't suit him. I wasn't paying attention to the conversation until I heard those words. Currently, I'm going to school for software development. Some people may call it software design or just programming, but coding school piqued my interest, so I joined on his conversion. After a few minutes I realized he didn't know the first thing about coding. From that point on I started to notice how he lied about everything about being in a relationship to past work experience. And he did it without thought. He knew I was studying software development and could have figured out that I would have seen right through him, but he kept talking. At that point I distanced myself from him. Compulsive liars are scary people. Interrupting others while they are speaking. They don't value others' input, opinions, stories, jokes, existence, and are probably a little narcissistic. I used to think this, and still generally do. But then I met my now really good friend, and she admits that she interrupts but tries not to. For her, she was raised in a loud family that all wanted their voices heard. If you didn't speak over people and waited your turn, you were never heard. But she realizes that she's the result of her family and at least tries to stop now. My so interrupts too. But I think he is also the result of his upbringing. Doesn't mean I don't call him out on it, but I try to keep it in mind. How they let their children treat other people's possessions. Someone who doesn't take off their sunglasses while talking to me. A blind person or an a-hole. Or just a really bright and sunny day. If they put salt on their food before tasting it, and using the word supposedly. Like any rule worth its salt, there are exceptions. For instance, there's a restaurant I go to all the time that has apparently never heard of salt. I vigorously salt the food before tasting it, to the point where I disgust even myself, and then inevitably add even more after I taste it and discover it wasn't enough. Man, lot of judgmental pricks in the thread today. To be fair, this thread is about judging people. Look out for what they think reveals a lot about a person. So read their minds. Got it? Today I learned that according to Reddit I'm a shitty person because I don't keep everything I own clean all the time. Internet history, or lack thereof. What they say when you ask if they like to read. See, I'd agree with this, but I know a guy who reads a lot, and says he loves to read, but only reads those shitty man books, the ones with titles like 1001 Things Every Man Should Know, or Financial Success Book, or that 50-cent book, and then quotes them in every conversation ever. He is just awful. When I was interested in a guy and asked this question, I was really just hoping they read something. The ones that never read anything, magazines, forums, etc., were immediately unattractive to me. It wasn't the only thing I was looking for, but as a person that loves reading, it was important to me. It means that the person is comfortable, to some level, with sitting at home and lounging about with a book. I could imagine reading with them like that. But if they don't read anything, I worried they would get bored with me easily since it's one of my passions. It already people using the word judge in reference to things no one should be judged for, especially in a thread that asks, what reveals a lot about a person? I find it revealing when people find revelation in insignificant things, like car cleanliness, desktop icons, toenails, or sunglasses. It tells me that they're either irrational or excessively judgmental. Helping out animals when they don't need to. My girlfriend's sister just got married to this guy, and I wasn't super sure about him. Well, last night we were leaving their place and 2 dogs were running around off leash. We waited around to see if anyone was coming for them. No one came, so I ran over to them, told them to come, and they came to me. They were 2 well-groomed, well-behaved dogs, obviously not strays, no tags on their collars. Well, him and his new wife had plans with some friends to go out for drinks. He told her to call them and tell them they were going to be late, and to explain the situation. We took them to the ASPCA and dropped them off. Turns out the owners stopped by the next morning and picked them up. It was the highlight of my day, and now I respect him for how he acted towards two defenseless creatures that, truly, he didn't need to do. But what really amazed me was the fact that on the drop-off form for the dogs there's a part where it says would you adopt the animal if no one claims it them, and he checked that part. With that he earned my respect, which is quite difficult to earn.